We turn our attention now to a story that most of us know well, the feeding of the 5,000. Today's text, found in Matthew's account, speaks to both the abundance of God's providence and the importance of being fully present to that providence. In this moment, I invite you to still your restless minds, to open your hearts and be present to this reading, because within these verses lies a profound invitation to live more intentionally and to trust more deeply in God's care. Hear now the story of the feeding of the 5,000.
Today's reading is from Matthew chapter 14, verses 13 to 21. Jesus withdrew in a boat to a deserted place by himself. When the crowds learned this, they followed him from the cities. When Jesus arrived and saw a large crowd, he had compassion for them and healed those who were sick. That evening, his disciples came and said to him, "This is an isolated place and it's getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go into the villages and buy food for themselves." But Jesus said to them, "There's no need to send them away. You give them something to eat." They replied, "We have nothing here except 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish." He said, "Bring them here to me." He ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass. He took the 5 loaves of bread and the 2 fish, looked up to heaven, blessed them, and broke the loaves apart, and gave them to his disciples. Then the disciples gave them to the crowds. Everyone ate until they were full, and they filled 12 baskets with the leftovers. About 5,000 men plus women and children had eaten.
You didn't know we were going to dance today. There's a Buddhist story about a young monk named Hidaki who sought enlightenment from a revered master. Hidaki asked the master, "What must I do to become wise?" The master replied, "Chop wood, carry water." Confused but obedient, Hidaki spent the next several weeks performing these simple tasks. But frustrated by the apparent lack of progress, Hidaki returned to the master. "I have done what you said," he protested, "but I don't feel any closer to enlightenment." The master smiled and replied, "Then chop wood, carry water. Be present to the chopping. Be present to the carrying. Attend to each moment with your full being, and you will begin to understand." Hidaki returned to his task, but this time with a different focus. Instead of rushing through, he allowed himself to feel the weight of the axe, to feel the rhythm of the swing, to feel the coolness of the water as it spilled over the edge of the bucket. In the simplicity of his work, he discovered something profound: the sacredness of the present moment. The mundane tasks became an opening to wisdom, to peace, and to the connection of all things. In a world that pulls us in 1,000 different directions, we often live on autopilot, don't we? Rushing from one task to the next. But what if we were to pause? What if, like Hidaki, we would attend fully to the moment at hand? We might discover, what might we discover in the rhythm of washing the dishes, or a quiet walk in the evening, or sharing a warm meal? And this is where we connect with our text today. It begins, "Jesus withdrew in a boat to a deserted place by himself." Why? Well, you see, just prior to this passage, Jesus was informed of John the Baptist's death. So one can surmise that he was grieving. But even in his grief, the crowds followed him. They came from the cities, and all these people took away that time that Jesus had set aside for himself. But notice something here. He didn't send them away. He didn't say, I'm grieving right now, don't bother me. Instead, Matthew tells us he was filled with compassion and healed the sick. This opening pericope offers us a window, I think, into the heart of God. A God who sees us in our needs. A God who meets us in our pain. A God who is present with us, always. And in this act of divine compassion, we're reminded that being present with others is a sacred calling. To pause, to listen, to truly see the person who's before you. Isn't that the very essence of the love that Jesus demonstrates? God's presence is finally not distant or detached, but instead it's embodied. It's embodied in acts of kindness and caring and solidarity. Okay, back to the story. As evening approached, the disciples urged Jesus to send the crowds away so that they could buy food for themselves. But Jesus responded with kind of a startling command. You give them something to eat, he said. Now, these words must have seemed kind of absurd to the disciples. I mean, they had only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, hardly enough to feed all these people. And yet Jesus took these humbling offerings and he blessed them. And in what could only be described as a miraculous sharing of each person's meager provisions, everyone ate until they were full, and there were 12 baskets of leftovers taken up. Now, this story is an example of what theologians call providence. So what is providence? Well, providence is God's active involvement in their creation. It signifies that God is not some distant creator who simply set the world in motion and left, but rather that God is an active force who sustains and cares and affirms all things, always inviting humanity into community. And this includes both the grand sweep of history and the seemingly insignificant details of everyday life. In other words, there's a certain sacredness in the ordinary things of life. Maybe think of it like this. Bread and fish are not extraordinary foods. Instead, they were very simple everyday items. Yet when shared in community, they became vehicles of divine abundance. And this is important. It's important because we sometimes fail to see God's presence in the mundane rhythms of our life. Like I said before, washing the dishes or folding the laundry or preparing a meal. These tasks may seem insignificant, but if we approach them with a mindfulness and a gratitude, they can become acts of worship. Like young Hidaki in our Buddhist story, we're invited to attend fully to each moment, trusting that God will meet us wherever we may be in that moment. Now, the disciples seem to have missed this moment. You see, what they saw before them was only scarcity, a meager supply of food, and an impossible situation. But Jesus saw something else. Jesus saw the possibility for abundance when what they had was shared in community. And that's a part of our calling as well. This story challenges us to live generously with gratitude, even in the face of uncertainty. It challenges us to release our anxiety and our fears about the state of our nation or our shared future, and instead to embrace this present moment as a gift. And like the crowd gathered on that hillside so long ago, we may sometimes feel as though the need is too great and our resources too limited. But it's in moments like these that we're invited to remember the 5 loaves and the 2 fish. We're invited to remember that God is not limited by human limitations. We're invited to remember that God has provided all that we need. There is enough for all people to be satisfied. It's simply a matter of a more equal distribution of goods. It's a matter of living generously and giving thanks for what we have, while at the same time expanding our understanding of what it means to live in community. And perhaps, even expanding our understanding of how to love our neighbor. I'm going to leave you today with a poem that I wrote this week that I think sums up this text very well. It's called "The Earth Moves Quietly." The earth moves quietly, its rhythm a steady pulse of grace. In the softness of the breeze, in the quiet drops of morning light, the sacred whispers, inviting us to listen, to see, to just be. Here on the plane of the ordinary, where bread breaks, cup overflows, God's abundance awaits. Not loud, but constant, like a river carving stones unnoticed, like nighttime creatures unseen in the daylight. We too are invited to turn our gaze towards the mysterious, to trust this small offering of ours that it will be sufficient, to kneel in the garden of enough and to find it blooming endlessly. My friends, as we go forth from this place today, may we carry with us the wisdom of this passage. May we offer what we have, no matter how small, trusting that it will multiply in ways we can't even imagine. And may we live with hearts full of gratitude and hands that share generously. My friends, as you go forth from this place today, chop wood, carry water. May it be so for you and for me. Amen.
Amen.